The Pieces Lie Where They Fell by Evil Humor. Edited and co-authored by Anon E. Mouse Jr. Read for you by My Name is R. Chapter 17. Rex, Nightblade, and Windbreaker. Part 1. Rex. Rex looked at the Blas bridge and had to admit the equestrians did not do things in half measures. It was simply massive, taking up what would be an entire city block in the middle of the Canticle Canal, was a masterfully crafted structure with symbols of their goddesses, demigoddess, and the virtues, the elements, Rex mentally corrected himself, worked into the side of it. The cowl of the stern warden, the veil of the wise oracle, the sea of stars of the magi of stars, were all under the holy sun and holy moon of the twin goddess princesses, standing as tall as statues. On the other side would be the symbols of the lady, the stallion of dedication, and the warrior, with a statue of the magi of stars standing, although a bit shorter than the goddess princesses. On the walls facing the water were murals depicting the scenes of Equestria's history, the war with the changelings, the war to reclaim the crystal dominance, and other major victories, with a dash of peaceful scenes. Rex wondered if he would ever get a chance to see the famous incomplete mural of the 6 tribes of Equestria in unity, with the 4th tribe left undetailed. "How are you doing, Vix-Lei?" Rex asked his companion, keeping his head forward as they walked in the crowd of ponies wishing to cross the water. Just a few paces back was Vittel and Windbreaker, and just ahead he could see Nightblade and Page Turner chatting to each other. If things were to go as planned, Page Turner would spot something on the Blas Bridge, and they would begin crossing. After that, Windbreaker would fly overhead with a parcel to deliver, and Vittel with a message to give, her handwriting impressive and a near match to the typed guard script. It would then be their turn to get past the checkpoint, with Vix-Lei posing as a mechanic and he her assistant. The fact that she had the actual tools for the trade helped a fair deal, as well as the fact that she knew more than he did about how machines worked. Good, Rex," she said softly, her eyes darting around and squinting a great deal. Out of the 6 of them, she was the only one without nocturnal eyesight. The fact that Paige could see in the dark was a pleasant surprise, but that made Vix-Lei the weak link for the moment, and his responsibility. "Just kinda nervous," she said, fidgeting and doing her best not to reach for her hammers. The duo of them covered up with a cloak to hide their heads and act as excess mass. "As long as we follow the plan, we should be—" He trailed off, his ear twitching as he saw both Knight and Page being ushered into the power generator plant with the other travelers by the Magi of Star guards, instead of the sidewalk along the outside of the generator building. This was against the plan. They had agreed to go on the public sidewalks, as it was far safer. They might have to abort the plan and try. Windbreaker flew past them, before being told to land by a Pegasi crew, and proceeded by going inside. Vittel simply ignored Windbreaker and talked to a rather tasty-looking crystal unicorn guard. While he had always heard stories from his former pack and the other diamond dogs about crystal ponies tasting divine, he never knew of a diamond dog that ate one, and he would never try it, as it would be hideously illegal, immoral, and indecent. Still, diamond dogs and dragons were forbidden in the Crystal Dominance for a reason. Vix-Lei took a series of short breaths before walking confidently to another guard, as Vittel began to curse wildly in Berniciio, the guard handling her, telling the Owie to calm down, with Windbreaker sliding in ahead of them. "Hello there," Vix-Lei chirped, waving to the guard that nodded them over. "We're this way, ma'am," the guard barked sharply, causing Vix-Lei to fold slightly, as she no doubt had a masterpiece of a story prepared to tell the guard. "And you too, sir," the guard flicked his eyes at him, causing Rex to blink in concern as they followed the guard through the doors. Still, they were getting through the generator station, with a number of civilians looking down in awe at the machines powering their city. He longed to pull out his dog-eared notebook and take notes of the magic and science-crafted turbines, but he could not, as Vix-Lei suddenly grabbed his arm tightly as she tipped forwards as if she'd tripped. "Sorry about that," she chuckled loudly before whispering in his ear, "This is a trap." "It's okay," he chuckled, patting her on the side before whispering back, "What do you mean?" "The generators are running on low," Vix-Lei said, her eyes darting around nervously, "and every tar is moved into secluding areas." "Topaz, you are correct," Rex swore, seeing how broken up they were getting from the rest of the group and other people. He could only smell Windbreaker and Vital's scents, Nightblade and Page Turner's being too distant for him to pick out. It seemed like they would need to fall onto their backup plan of fighting to get away. "Are you ready for this, Vix-Lei?" he asked, as he reached for a smoke potion inside his vest pocket. "Yeah," she whispered back, with the guard turning to face them with a frown on his face. "I hope the others are ready." She then reached behind her, tying her handkerchief he had given the Minotaur before around her face, and then pulled out one of her hammers, hopefully the real one. Rex mirrored the action of tying the handkerchief around his face before reaching in his pocket and pulling out a smoke potion. "Fire in the hole! There's a nutter here!" Vix-Lei shouted loudly, causing the guard to flinch in surprise, and those nearby to scan the area around them in sudden, tense battle formation. Rex had to smirk to himself. She knew how to use a crowd fairly well. Tossing the potion, Rex threw himself forwards with Vix-Lei, both of them determined to make their way to the other end of the power station, with the doors to their side of the canal. Where the doors to their side of the canal would be, and hopefully the rest of the team would be there with them. Part 2. Nightblade. As soon as he heard Vix-Lei's shouting, Knight knew things had gone badly. Drawing determined point, he felt Paige tie the cloth the diamond dog gave him around his mouth with her magic, as he took in the situation. The Magi of Stars guards were telling them to stand down, but Knight felt no inclination to listen to them as a unicorn guard swept in her sword to knock his away. Rolling his eyes as he locked his sword into hers and flicked to the side, he felt Paige jump onto his back as he threw himself over the side and down into the rows of generators. Snapping his wings out, he flew to the underside of the walkway before landing in the middle of a row of large metal spiny things, his coat standing on edge. Blinking, he heard a large amount of shouting and coughing as smoke filled the room. Rex's smoke potion and his handkerchief actually working. "Careful, Knight," Paige hissed as she slid off his back. "Those are capacitors. If you hit them with your sword, you'll be electrocuted." "Thanks, Paige," Knight said as he put away his sword, his eyes darting around as guards came down to their level, holding wasters, no doubt filled with heavy material to make up for the non-lethality of it. If he or Paige were to get hit by one, it would more or less numb the entire area with deep bruising. It would be a concern if his talent were not swordplay and Paige did not have magic. As one came down to strike his wing, he rolled to the other side while tucking his wing in and pushing off the ground ever so slightly to land on top of the waster. Using the momentary surprise and confusion from the guard to grab the weapon and pushing himself forwards by pushing off the ground with 3 legs and flapping with his wings, Knight managed to close the distance enough so he could jab the end into the guard's protected throat, while bringing his wing to strike the other guard's helmet at the temple, with Paige using her magic to slam the ears of another guard at the same time. The guards were on the ground. The guards on the ground were still rolling in pain. Knight hoped the others could make their way through, as he was not going to put Paige in danger by going to try to find them and leave her alone. Even now he could hear Vittel, Windbreaker, and the others land, his ears flicking as he picked up their voices. He and Paige dashed through the machinery, hearing the buzz coming from the capacitor things that they danced through. Glancing behind him, he could see other guards begin to descend to their level, taking their time to land carefully between the power generators. Except for one. A guard's hind leg brushed against one of them, and there was a sudden flash of light and a shout of pain. Wrinkling his nose as he smelled charred metal and burnt flesh, Knight pushed Paige forwards towards the side, hoping they would find an exit. That's when the lights went out. Part 3. Windbreaker. Wind wasn't sure what Vittel was saying over and over again, but it was a swear. He couldn't fault her. This was insane. What were they thinking, trying to do this? Get past trained guards across a highly known bridge? They should have just gone the other. "Whoa!" he shouted, jumping backwards as a guard swung their wooden sword at him, barely avoiding crashing into the metal towers. He then flew upwards to go into a quick dive and tackle the guard. They wrestled briefly, and while the guard might have training on their side, Windbreaker was a griffin, and they were the ancient predator of the ponies. Punching the guard hard in the face, he reached over and grabbed something on the pony's back. Dropping the guard, he found Vittel at his side, with a guard held by her tail hoof, before throwing them to the ground. "Una ballista? In serio?" she said, and while he couldn't understand her, he had a feeling he knew exactly what she meant by the look she had on her face. "It's the best I could find," he snapped at her, picking up the quiver and slinging it on his back. "Si quera procedes in sar una ballesta? I mean, can you even use that thing?" she asked him, as they continued to move forwards, forcing their way through the guards. "I'm pretty sure—" He broke off, both Vittel and him diving to different sides, as a massive Earth Pony guard ran straight towards them, with the lights shutting off and plunging them into total darkness. Windbreaker froze, waiting for his eyes to adapt to the darkness, when he heard a voice he knew call out. "Every pony stop!" Fair Scales shouted, the inspector standing tall on the upper floor. "Windbreaker, listen to me. Turn yourself in now, and you will not be in trouble. I've been promised by the Captain General to give you anything, and I have a very good deal for you." Windbreaker felt his breath quicken as he heard Fair Scales speak. He was the inspector that kept in touch with griffins from his hatchery, and Fair Scales was good. If he promised something to a griffin, he made sure it was delivered, and he somewhat actually cared about the griffins he knew. "Your debt will be gone. You will have access to your parents' records. You will not be charged for aiding these traitors, and you will be recognized as a free citizen." Fair Scales' deal caused Windbreaker to nearly bow over. Rubbing his throat, he tightened his grip on his crossbow and said, "I'll never get a better deal than this," drawing the attention of the inspector and the other guards to him. "That is true, Wind, and I know you are a smart griffin," Fair Scales said, pleading with him. "Come with me, and we can make everything all right again." Wind curled his talons and felt some tears sting his cheeks. He knew that Fair Scales wasn't lying to him, But he also knew that what the Spirit of Balance said was true, and he couldn't just turn his back on it. "I'm sorry, Fair Scales, but I can't," he said, loading his crossbow, his eyes closed. He then fired the bolt into the metal tower, causing a very loud grating sound, before there was a loud booming sound. When he opened his eyes, he was on a dirt path in front of an old-fashioned sign saying this was an apple farm, hearing some thudding sounds. Tilting his head in confusion, he walked down the path, following the noise he was hearing. He walked into the rows of apple trees before stopping to look at the apples. He could always offer to work for the price of it, he thought to himself, as he pulled an apple off a tree and took a bite of it before pulling back in surprise. "Yeah, my apples are plenty tasty, not like how my kin does it nowadays," a voice chuckled from in front of him. "Say, can y'all do me a favor? If you ever run into one, can you tell them that their entire family is spinning in their graves with how they're all ruining our family's good name?" Windbreaker blinked in confusion to who this orange earth pony was. He felt that he knew who the Virtues were fairly well, but she didn't match any of the... The mare then brushed some sweat off her head, before putting the easily recognizable holy symbol on her head. "You're the Stallion of Dedication!" he shouted, pointing a claw at her. The mare just looked at him. She kept the look on him long enough for him to blush and pull back his arm and start to scratch the back of his head. Do I look like a stallion, partner?" she huffed at him, with Windbreaker wincing guiltily. "Darn fools mistook my brother for me and got stuck with that darn title for the last 1,000 years. She pawed the ground, grunting in annoyance. "You can't imagine how much she bugs me, the darn varmint." No?" Windbreaker scratched the back of his head more. "As I can't really call you that, what can I call you, ma'am?" "Shucks, Sugar Cube, I haven't introduced myself yet." She then trotted over to him and shook his talon. "My name is Applejack, from the Apple Clan, and welcome to Sweet Apple Acres." Windbreaker noticed the amount of pride in her voice before he saw her deflate a bit. "Well, it ain't the real one. That's long gone. This here is my paradise, with my family stepping out so we can talk, Windbreaker." "This is some paradise, Applejack," he said, taking a deep breath of the fresh country air, and felt himself unwind slightly. He took a sniff, and he found himself looking at another apple. "Go for it, Windbreaker," Applejack said, with a smirk on her face, clearly pleased at how hooked he became after one apple. "We're still going to have our little chat." Windbreaker made a weak sound as he bit into the apple, wondering what she was talking about. "You know what the issue is, Windbreaker," Applejack said softly, placing a hoof on his shoulder. "Your drinking is serious, and no one wants you to get sick 'cause of it." Windbreaker was about to protest this, but then let out a sigh. "Yeah," he said, sitting down on the ground. "I guess I do have a problem, but it's not my fault." "Yeah, I know, and trust me, I'm mighty upset," Applejack snorted. "I mean, who decides the best way to deal with foals fighting is to give one of them some booze?" "Hey, I had problems keeping my beak shut, and to them, that was the best way for me to fudge the truth," Windbreaker said weakly before hunkering over. "Was given my first bottle when I was 9, and I haven't been able to stop drinking since." "I know, and if we were still alive, trust me, partner, we would have words with them folks that run your hatchery," Applejack said, pulling Windbreaker into a hug, which he returned, with tears running down their faces. "What happened to you and them other griffins ain't right." "So, what is my element?" Windbreaker asked after a period of time had passed. You know what it is. Applejack patted his arm. It's that thing that you've always had trouble with. Truth? Windbreaker asked, tilting his head. Honesty, she clarified. We keep the rest honest by being honest. I see, Windbreaker said, nodding his head. Look, Applejack, I'll try and get and stay sober. That's good, and you should stop being a living lie detector. Applejack snorted at his confusion. You were close to our element from the get-go. That addiction of yours just muddled it elsewhere. I guess that makes sense, Windbreaker said, a smile breaking out on his face. Anything else I need to know? Yeah, but I can't say, because Balance would be forced to release something even worse than what you a lot are dealing with now. And trust me, you ain't ready for that, Rattlesnake. Applejack shuddered, before looking serious at him, her eyes glassing over. If you force her to inform you of what the former honesty is referring to, the monster I would be forced to let free would end this world. Wind felt his feather and fur bristle at this, a stab of absolute dread and fear pulling at his heart, and he could faintly hear what seemed like laughter. It is time for you to return to the world of the living, Windbreaker, Balance said, using Applejack's body to tap his forehead, with his eyes closing in reflex. Opening his eyes again, he saw an empty room, with the door in front of him opening up. Alright, a few comments for this chapter, some of which about the chapter, some of which about my presentation of it. First of all, I really thought from the scene he got it in that his element was going to be loyalty. I guess, honesty doesn't go against what we've seen of him. He can't tell a lie whether he tries or not, that's for sure. Because despite his claims, he's not great at hiding his drunkenness. Yes, let's see. I am from the South, so I'd really like you to tell me how I did faking a Southern accent, because it's not how I naturally speak. This is me naturally speaking. I live in the South. I have for the majority of my life, including not the very earliest memories I have, but most of my early childhood was down south. I've lived in Texas and Louisiana. That's where I've spent most of my life. Feel free to tell me if I messed up on my Southern accent. Not if I did it not according to what you've seen in the movies, but any of you who've actually been to the South, known people from the South. Feel free, because as much as I've grown up here, I'm not a Southerner, not truly in many ways. I think my mother was, but I am not. City folk, not country. All the same, I reckon I didn't do too bad, did I? Let's see. I mentioned the honesty and loyalty confusion bit I had. Mentioned my accent. Was there something else I was gonna tell y'all? That was not on purpose. I'm not entirely without a Southern accent. Just not as strongly as when I'm specifically trying for it, like with Applejack there. Because she was written with a Southern accent. So I figured why not try and hit the tone as well as the words. Yes. Maybe I could have actually tried to go for Applejack specifically, but I ended up mostly just going for Southern. Yeah. Anyway, hope y'all enjoyed. I think it's because I was doing a Southern accent a minute ago. This isn't on purpose, but neither is it coincidental. Well, hope you enjoyed this video. Me accidentally slipping into a country southern accent. Have a pleasant time. Well wishes to you all, and adieu. Last thing, I do normally go for specifically a more... I think I'm going for a generic upper-class accent. I'm normally going for... Someone specifically mentioned I sounded English at one point. Yes! That is great! Also, generic American accent is perfectly acceptable too. It's not that I'm against having a southern accent so much as some of the connotations it brings with it. You know, I try to sound like an educated individual, not a country hick. So, I don't try to have words like y'all slipping out of my voice when I'm trying to get into college, trying to get a job. That is not in my best interest. Plus, I've always liked to practice big words. Yes. Loquaciousness is not against my nature. Well, for real this time, goodbye everyone, see you later, have fun, thanks for listening.